Hello, this is Dean Radin, and I'm on Your Superior Self.
Hi, I'm Anita Murjani, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hello, this is Dr. Raymond Moody, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hi, Cultural Creatives. I'm Bruce Lipton, and I'm here to join you with Your Superior Self.
Hi, this is Paul Selig, and this is Your Superior Self.
What's up, everybody? I'm Aubrey Marcus, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hello, this is Diane Morrison, and this is Your Superior Self.
Diane, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. I found you on the QHHT website, level 3 practitioner, studied under the great Dolores Cannon. We had an amazing conversation. I can't even remember when. It seems so long ago, but I had to have you on. But thank you for taking the time.
You know what? It's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, we had a wonderful talk. It was so easy chatting with you. And it was so much fun. So I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for having me on.
So let's get started like this. How did you find QHHT? How did you become so involved in this modality?
Okay, so that's a great story. And pretty much I was given the book Custodians back in late 2010. Or early 2011. And I read the book and everything made sense and all kinds of stuff was happening inside of me. It just felt like everything was getting into alignment. And I desperately felt like I needed to go have a session with Dolores Cannon. That was the beginning. And from there, I found out there was a year-long waiting list to get a session with her, and that wasn't going to happen. I wasn't going to wait. I needed to see her immediately. It was so urgent. I just had to go. And the gals at the office at the time said I could take the class. And I was kind of surprised. And I actually had no interest in taking the class at the time, but I just needed to get with Dolores. It was so intense that I said, sign me up. And I went to Arkansas and I took the class just to be close to her, to learn from her, to find out who she was, and also to check in with her when she was in the bathroom to see if I could have a session.
So you went down, what was it when you went down there, right? Like, was she doing like a group talk, like a lecture, like what she typically does?
She was doing a training for the hypnosis, QHHT. Yeah, she was doing a whole training session. And I said, okay, I'm going to go. I didn't really have any interest in becoming a practitioner at the time. That wasn't on my radar. It was that I needed to be around Dolores, and there was nothing that was going to stop me. It was so intense. It was like an internal pull, right? So that was the beginning. And I sat there in the class, eyes wide as saucers, soaking up every word she said, just sitting in awe and listening to how she did the technique. And I learned how to do the technique. And it sounds kind of funny, but on the way home, on the plane ride home, I heard this little voice in my head saying, well, if you want to do the work, you have to make a space for it. Because I was working full time as an occupational therapist and I had no time really. But this little voice in my head said, well, if you want to do this, you got to make some space like in your schedule to do this. And I just was kind of dumbfounded, like, I guess I'm going to do this, So the guidance started coming through right away, loud and clear. And after that, I just couldn't get enough of it. I studied everything. I started seeing clients. I started having sessions. I was working full time as an occupational therapist and fitting in sessions on the weekends. And it seemed like I was working around the clock, but I loved it so much. Nothing mattered but doing the sessions and helping people and staying really close to the hub with Dolores and Julia and the work. So I just dove in. Like, I'd really never had that experience of just diving into something completely unknown to me before this. So I just stayed in it. I learned as much as I could. I was really involved on the forum that we had at the time. And then one thing led to the other. And, level 2 wasn't on my radar at the time, but all of a sudden I started having this feeling like I should go and I really wanted to go. I called the office to sign up and they said, oh, we don't have any spots left. And they said, we could put you on the waiting list. And I said, okay, put me on the waiting list. And it got down to the wire, and all of a sudden they called and said, we have an opening. And then I dove into that level 2. That was in, that was 2012, I think in the fall. And there was a huge storm on the East Coast. So we all got delayed for a little while after the class was over. And it was really interesting to find out more about that, because everybody was doing sessions and asking the higher self what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then one thing led to the other. And I just kept working on the forum and studying and learning and doing sessions. And then I got invited to go and do this group with Dolores and Julia, where we were invited to sit in and help create level 3. So that was an amazing experience.
Wow.
And then we all had to pass it. And then I joke a lot, but I say we all failed, because level 3 was created because Dolores had such a long waiting list of people that wanted to have sessions. And she was so busy traveling around the world teaching the classes that she wanted to make sure she had a group of practitioners that she could refer to, and that she wanted to make sure that we were doing it exactly like she did, so she could feel confident that people would get a good session. So we were that first batch that were lucky enough to be called to help and create it and then pass it. And then we finally all made it. So we could be part of her team, that she felt very confident we were doing it like she did. So it was very much like a peer review. You had to have Dolores and Julia critique your work, a video and an interview. And it was quite intense, and it was a wonderful experience. So I feel like I got lucky, but all the stars aligned, and I was in it 1,000%. I just could not get enough. There was something that kind of overtook me, if that makes any sense, right?
Sure. No, I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
When you were a level 1 though, you had to, I think there's 15 sessions you have to do for free. Is that right? Or 20 or something like that? Where
Yeah,
you're like
I
an
think
intern?
it was 25. I mean, you know what? It was so, we've evolved, and Julia's been creating and changing and adding to the training so much since then. It was really loose back then. That was over a decade ago. So I think we had to have 25 before we could take level 2, because, and yeah, we kind of had an arbitrary number of maybe around 25 before you start charging, but it was really like, you had to tune in with yourself. You had to see how your sessions were going. You had to make sure that you were getting good results. And then after a while, it wasn't a set number at the time. After a while, when you felt confident and people were getting good sessions, you could then decide to charge. Now it's a little bit more structured.
Sure. Were you getting those results though in your first 25? Like, even though it was not like a requirement back then, maybe not, but were you getting, like, when you were sitting down with clients and you were reading the script or you're doing the method, were you, I mean, I'm going to do this, right? Like I have consciously made this decision that at some point next year, I'm going to sign up and participate in QHHT and get that qualification, because I just find it so fascinating.
I'm so glad. Yeah.
That there's a fear there, right? That my friends and circle of friends are not that big, right? So it's like, now I have to like figure out and find out people that I'm going to try this on. But there's a fear that when I start doing it, it's like, it's not going to work, right? Like, did you have that fear at the very beginning that, like, what, if I don't do this right, or I'm afraid that this isn't going to work, we're not going to have a past life regression, we're not going to have a conversation with the higher self, I'm going to look like a fraud, I'm going to look like that does any of that sound familiar at all?
I'm going to tell you the truth. Something overtook me. I had no fear of that happening. I saw Dolores facilitate a session in class. I saw it happen. So I'd read her books. I'd read the book that I read. The whole book is filled with stories of her sessions. So I was a believer from before I said yes to go to the class. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, I knew this worked. I knew that if I had a session with her, she could help me understand some things. I had full faith. I don't know I don't know. I don't really understand it, but there was nothing about me that doubted this work, if that makes any sense.
Mhm. No, I think there's something to it, right? But there's always like a little
Yeah.
part of me that like the skeptic that's like,
Yeah.
like, is it going to work for you? You know what I mean? Because she's Dolores Cannon, Julia Cannon, you are level 3. Like you guys have definitely come up, as pioneers in this modality, or at least, hypnosis has been around for a long time, but for QHHT, you guys have really pioneered this. There is some doubt, some self-confidence, like where it's like, it's, and I'm just being transparent. I'm just being really honest here. It's like,
oh yeah, I love that. I love that you're doing that. It's wonderful.
Yeah, it's just like, first off, like I haven't even like, people know I do a podcast, but they're like, people that are around the neighborhood, they're going to be like, come on, let's go talk to your higher self. And they're going to look at me and like, what are you talking about? Because it's like the 25 that you do are going to have to be like local. And plus you do this in person, right? Like, so you do QHHT in person. It can't be over Zoom. So it has to be either people fly to you or you do people in your area, which I'm lucky enough to be in a city. But there is some fear. It's kind of like, am I going to be able to bring in the people to do this work and like really, solidify a little bit more of Dolores Cannon's like legacy and belief that we are connected to our higher self and that we can heal ourselves, if that makes sense.
Totally. And, I'm just going to say this. It's okay that you feel exactly like you feel. I think that mostly people feel like that, but because people have read her books and they've listened to her on YouTube, we used to say in the beginning, build off of her faith and ability, believe in what she did, and then slowly you will start to see the results as you practice, and then you'll build belief in yourself. But borrow her belief before you start, and then gain your own belief by doing sessions and practicing and seeing how it goes for you, because it does work. And I just don't want you to worry, because worry and doubt is sort of the thing that kind of shuts us down a little bit. And Dolores had a saying, believe, achieve, doubt, you're out, because belief opens up doors for people. But when you suspend doubt, we could say, for just a moment, you can have it, but don't let it stop you. Basically, you're going to be excited about this work when you learn it. It's so exciting that after you take the training, you're going to be a different person than when you are sitting here now. You're going to be so excited, and that enthusiasm and that excitement is going to spill out of you, because it affects all of us like this. And we're just so excited. We're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Why doesn't everybody know about it? And so your excitement and your enthusiasm, as you say to people, hey, look, I just learned something new and I got to practice it. Would you help me? That is going to spill over, and you can say it's something that you can learn more. You can get in touch with your higher self, and some people can heal themselves. You can just start slowly and say what you know to be true from Dolores's work. And then as you have more sessions and practice your sessions, you're going to see direct results yourself. Like with the first time somebody went and saw past life, I was like, oh my word, it's like, it's really working. It's so exciting, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And all you have to do is do it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, you just do it, right? You just do it. And that's it, right? I just haven't done it. So it's like, there is this, you give yourself enough time, you'll talk yourself out of anything, right? Like I'm really excited about the work, because this is like, all the mystical, spiritual teachers have said the answers are within. And this is an actual modality where you go within and you can heal yourself. You can receive messages. You can work on past traumas. You can see past life trauma. I mean, this is really going within yourself and finding the answers. I mean, this is fascinating work.
Yeah, it's amazing. And the thing that I love is it's natural. We're really entering this state. We call it theta brainwave state. Right before we go to sleep, it's when the dream images come. So it's actually very natural. It's just, we do it as a technique. So we don't let people fall asleep. We just hang out in theta for a while. Sure. So if we were in a normal sleep cycle, we'd just go to sleep at this point. But with this technique, we actually just help people by engaging in a dialogue when they get into that dreamy state, and then information comes and images come and they talk about it, and it's really quite natural and it feels so good. People are basically in a very deeply relaxed state and they're just chatting up a storm about whatever they're experiencing from the inside out, right? It's easy.
Who was your first guinea pig?
That's such a funny question, and I love it because I was trying to remember who went first, and because it's usually family and friends. And I think it was my son, because we've been talking about this lately. He was 18 years old, which is about the age that, you can do this. Dolores didn't want to have sessions on anyone too much younger than that. But I think he was around 18. And I was so excited. I'm like, let's try it. And I think he volunteered to be the first. I think he was my first client. So that was a wild experience. And mother, son, it was kind of an interesting thing. I don't know if you want to find out anything about that or not.
Yeah, let's go. Like, what was the past life?
Okay, so here's the deal. That was my first session, and it was my son. Now, sometimes family can be a little trickier because, they don't always want to open up or whatever. But what happened in that session, I don't think you would mind me telling you, because we actually stopped it early because he started relaxing so fast, probably because I'm his mom and he trusted me, right? So he started relaxing so fast. And then he said he had this experience like he was falling. And that can happen if you feel like you're dropping down. But he felt like he was falling. He felt like he was dropping, and he didn't really tell me about it, but he just pulled himself out of the hypnosis. He basically was like, I'm not doing this. What is going on, right? So he stopped the session, which is actually something that's kind of fun for people that haven't really heard of this before, and for people to know that he just decided he didn't want to do it, and he woke up. Basically, he got up, right? Mm-hmm. So that's how natural it is. It's like, I'm not doing this. He was 18. He wasn't really into it, but he was helping his mom. So that happened. And then I counted him out the right way and everything, and we had a big talk. And there were so many things that he and I learned about how his life was very overscheduled, into sports, into band, into karate, all the stuff. And it was just go, go, go all the time. So word out to all the parents out there, kids need downtime, but we never had downtime. So I think the whole experience of deeply relaxing very quickly was so foreign to him because he had never really had a lot of downtime. We were so overscheduled, overstructured. It was quite a lesson. And so we had this big talk, and I realized as a mom, oh my word, like I have not served him well, that I have not had space enough, or that for whatever reason, I didn't know that he needed that. So I learned a lot about how he was raised. He learned a lot about how he felt when he went into a deep state of relaxation. But that wasn't the end of it. So now fast forward 11 years later, he and I have talked about that, and he's starting to put together pieces for himself. And I don't think he would mind me sharing this with you here on the show, but he's starting to put it together. And he had a fear of heights that started when he was 2 years old, out of the blue. And then he started thinking about things. And he's like, Mom, I've been thinking, I think maybe I was in an aircraft, like in a war situation maybe, and I was going down. And I think that might have been what I was feeling when we started the session. And he goes, I didn't like it, and I wanted it to stop, so I pulled myself out before we could even explore it. Do you know what I mean? Because he was only 18, and he was kind of like, what? I'm not doing this. But now that he's older, and it took 11 years to kind of digest it, he's starting to understand more about himself and maybe where he was before he came into this life, but it had to go on his own time. It had to be an organic unfolding of his knowingness. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So did you ever
we're gonna
explore
do another
that again?
session.
Oh, you haven't done it yet. So
So we're gonna do another session very soon because he feels like he's ready now. This is why Dolores said she didn't like to do it when people were too young too, because the people have to live a little bit. They have to learn about themselves a little bit and kind of grow and know themselves before you want to go introducing more information about other lifetimes, right?
Sure. So who was the first person you experienced the higher self with?
So here's the thing. I used to work in healthcare, and I was so excited about this because it's natural healing, without meds, without surgery, without anything, natural healing through this state of relaxation and the energy of our higher selves. So I think I was chatting it up at work, and I had some friends at work that wanted to try it. So I was lucky in that way that we all worked in healthcare and we were kind of all open to learning more about stuff like this. And I believe it was a nurse that I worked with who came and had a nice past life. It was a Native American life, really lovely. I don't remember the details right now because it was a long time ago. Oh, I do remember something. She wanted to, there was some healing that was happening. And I think she wanted to, I think she had some anxiety, and I think she wanted to quit smoking. And so when we got to the higher self part, I said something about, we talked about the anxiety and what was the root cause of it. And I think it was something from that Native American life that she was shown. And so once you learn what the thing is about, what the origin is about, and you understand the lesson, you don't really have to have the condition that you created anymore. So it can go away through the knowledge and understanding, and your higher self can just help you release it energetically. So it's pretty simple. But what happened was, when I asked about the smoking, and said she wanted to quit smoking to the higher self was like, she can smoke. And I was kind of dumbfounded coming from a health background. I'm like, what do you mean she can smoke? We think we're supposed to stop all the time, right? And they said the smoking actually helps her to feel calm. And so it's better for her to keep smoking and calm herself down. In this one particular case, I don't want anybody listening to think, I can just start smoking and blah, blah, blah. No, it was individual to this person. Because she was anxious, it was better for her to have a calming agent that was natural, tobacco. And it was more helpful than having the anxiety that she had, which also we know can create other kinds of situations with high blood pressure and all these other things. So her higher self said that she didn't need to quit smoking. And I was confused. And I said, so, well, will you check her lungs? Will you scan her lungs and tell me how they look? And so they scanned the lungs energetically, and they said her lungs are fine. I said, so you're telling her she can smoke because it's better for her, it calms her, and it's better than having her be anxious. Okay, but what about her lungs? I said, will you please protect her lungs and keep her lungs healthy so that she can be healthy and do the work that she came here to do? And her higher self said, absolutely, we're going to take care of her. No worries. So she was told that it was okay for her to smoke, and she was told that her higher self was going to keep her lungs healthy. That's how powerful this higher self is. We call it subconscious in this work. It can do anything if it's appropriate, and it knows what's appropriate for each soul that comes for a session. Isn't that something?
Yeah. That is just so amazing, right? Like I hear about you keep referring to it as they,
Yeah.
because I don't know if they have a name or anything like that other than the subconscious.
Well, the reason I do that is because it's kind of what Dolores did and what we all did. But Dolores defined the subconscious as, and she just needed a name that was neutral. And she defined it as the collective of higher energies that work with us when we're in the body, like our guides. People refer to them as, many names, but guides, ascended masters, angels, source, God, Christ consciousness, everything like that is part of our higher self. It's the energetic, huge part of us that is connected to source and all that is, to God, source, creation, energy, whatever words people like. Basically, we all have this connection. It is our life force energy. So if we're alive, we have a connection to a higher self, whatever you choose to call it, the oversoul, super consciousness, subconscious was just a word Dolores chose to help people to have a neutral name, that this thing collective could help us. So we said they because it's really more than one energy vibration. It's more than one being. Sometimes if we like to relate to our higher selves as guides and beings, right? It's a collective, and even that collective, if it needs help, can ask for other guides to help out with healing or with bringing information to the person when they're in that state of relaxation. Isn't that something?
Yeah, it is. Connecting with the higher self through your clients, have you been able to like develop stronger intuitive abilities or psychic abilities that allow you to connect more with that higher self as well?
Absolutely. And I'm going to say this. I have learned that we are actually all wired to be psychic and telepathic. It has to do with the pineal gland and how we're created, how our body is meant to function. And for various reasons, I guess over time that got shut down. Maybe we misused our power as a collective of humans, and that happens too, and no big deal, really. Here we are now. However, I've had a lot of my own personal sessions too, and that has really helped me open up, because I was a little bit left brain when I started this, and I had a little bit of a hard time opening up because I forgot how to operate my system, you could say. I forgot how to check in with my higher self. So I had to kind of learn it. But yes, Dolores's whole goal in creating QHHT was so that people could have an experience of one session. It's a full day, but they could come, they could experience the session, and they could have the hypnosis part where they actually made that direct connection with their own higher self, remembered who they really are, which is this source of all knowing inside of us. And then they could get the wisdom, they could get the healing in one session. Then they could return to their life and they could remember who they are. She wanted one direct experience. Now go out there and remember who you are and turn inward for your guidance now. So this whole technique was designed to give people that experience. So they have that in the session. For me, I had this in my first session. I had a good connection in the first part, but I didn't have a good connection with my higher self. So I just kept having sessions, kept practicing so I could open up. I was already a practitioner. So I met practitioner friends, and now they're like, I have QHHT buddies that are practitioners. And through work with my QHHT practitioner friends, we would do sessions on each other, and we would ask all kinds of questions. Delve into the mysteries of life, more deeply. But in doing that, yes, it opened up my psychic abilities. I will say the natural abilities. And so I get direct guidance, and I usually have a practice of meditating and then asking for guidance. So anyone can do this. It's something we have available to us. So it's not like I'm anybody special. Everybody can do this. But for me, it took a little more practice maybe than some people. So practice makes progress, right?
Do you hear it as words or thoughts or feelings or emotions or what?
Well, that's a good question, because I think everybody hears it or receives information in a little different way. Everybody has sort of maybe one pathway that's easier for them, whether it's auditory or sensory or smells or knowingness. We have lots of pathways, and everybody's wired a little differently. For me, like when I was young, I had a couple of experiences where it first kind of happened, and it really felt like I was hearing, but it wasn't physical hearing. It was like this voice inside your head, but not like actual hearing. It was this sort of a sense like, oh my gosh, I'm hearing it. It was almost like I'm getting this information, and it feels like hearing, but it's just like an imprint or guidance comes into your system, and you receive it in a way that seems like inner ears, like your inner vision, but it's your inner hearing. So it's not quite the same as physical hearing. I want to make it that clear. That's how mine came in. But it was so strong, it felt like hearing. And then it went away, and I couldn't figure out how to get that back. If I had it that one time, how do I get it back? Well, QHHT has been the answer. So for me, it's gone through a series of phases. First, it starts visually. Usually in a typical session, you'll start to get visions coming to you, and the client's job is just to report what they're seeing, sensing, or knowing to the practitioner. So then a story unfolds. Usually it starts visually. A lot of people receive visually images like we do in our dreams. That's our natural way. But for me, practicing and having lots of sessions, now it's just, I call it like imprinting or downloading. There's just ideas come, and I can write them down. A lot of people like to write down their guidance or record it so that they can listen to it later. But this is really natural, and it's easy to do. once you get the hang of it. And sometimes people take classes to learn, but having a QHHT session really seems to help us have a stronger connection to our own higher guidance, if that makes any sense.
Sure. No, it does. But how do you discern from the information, right? Like, how do you know you're not just making up, like receiving that those messages, like through those thought forms or downloads, and like trusting in that, right? Like, I don't want to say, oh, you should test it, like, oh, well, show me this, and then, oh, I know that now I know it's from you. But like, how did you discern it for yourself that the information was accurate and was coming from your higher self?
Yeah, we talk about this a lot in classes too. It's a feeling. So when it's coming from maybe more of our conscious mind, our personality, our egoic nature, it tends to be more of a thought kind of thing that comes through our, like, a lot of us have a lot of thoughts, programs, conditioning that we've had in our minds and our heads for a long time. We inherit it from our families. We get taught things. We go to school. We go to religious practices and things like that. We have a bunch of thoughts in our head. So we can be hearing those thoughts that are kind of learned thoughts. But the way that I kind of trust more, or the way that I learned to trust more, was the feeling. There's this incredible feeling of almost like a love that you've never experienced before. I guess it's unconditional love. It's a feeling that comes in with the information that feels so good. It's almost like you could just melt into a puddle of love. It's that kind of frequency to it. It feels very different than a thought that you're thinking in your own head, which kind of has less energy of love to it. It's more practical or logical, right? So a thought feels very different than this guidance that comes in, which seems to come right into the heart center. And that is how most people start to learn to discern. How does it feel? Back in the beginning, when all of us were like studying things online and looking everything up that came out of sessions, we'd see a whole bunch of information, and people were like, how do I know what's real? How do I know what's true? And we just kept saying, how does it feel? Because the information that's sort of higher guided will feel more loving and kind, and information that's more thought-based or human collective-based feels more like fear-based training. So people started to learn by, how does it feel? Does it feel like fear, or does it feel like love, right? So higher self is very loving, more so than we know on this planet. So it's a very high vibrational frequency of love or light, we could say. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What has been the trend in the higher self's messages for us recently, right? Like, I know Dolores wrote a ton of books. I think it was like, what is it, 19 or 20 or something like that, where they were helping.
I actually, yeah, 19 plus, right?
19 plus, right? So what are the messages that you've been receiving with your clients from the higher self? I mean, do you receive messages for the whole, or do you get just guidance for that individual?
Well, I'm going to say that I see themes and patterns in the clients that come to me. And the themes and patterns are very strong right now. I get a lot of what I call light workers, people that are helper beings. They're here to help in many different ways. And I'm going to say that I get a lot of people. Light workers tend to have lives with a lot of trauma, because they got to get in here, learn what it's really like, what's really going on Earth, so they can experience it firsthand. And then they have to learn to heal themselves. And then they are also usually helping other people to do healing of themselves. So there's this pattern of light workers have had difficult lives. They've been in the trenches. Now they're coming in droves, where light workers, we could say, have been on this planet doing hard work, helping people for a long time, and they're tired and they're weary and they're getting sick. It's been a long haul, and they've been through the trenches. They've been through the tough stuff, boots on the ground for decades now. So I'm getting a lot of these people coming in, and the higher self is basically kind of like insisting that they start to heal themselves. They've done enough. The pattern is they need to come in now. They've helped so many people, but they need to now start helping themselves. This is a huge pattern right now. Healers, heal yourself, basically. And I'm going to just tell you right now, for whatever reason, maybe my background, maybe my life, I don't know, and it doesn't even really matter, but I'm getting a ton of people with just so much trauma. And the sessions are all about the higher self wants to heal them, wants to clear out the old energy, their burden and their load, and help them heal their bodies because they've taken on a lot. So sometimes I sit back and I hear stories all the time. And the theme lately is about, I'm going to just say it, it's rough, but it's about child sexual abuse, really, and horrible, horrific abuse that people have endured from the time they were children. And this may be rough for people to hear, but it's real. And people have been going through this for a long time. And I think I didn't know the extent of it, to tell you the truth. So this is a pattern that's really strong right now. Like a lot of children on this planet, I guess, or a lot of people that come into this office. And now I've seen, like, I'm sure it's over 1,000 something clients over the time that I've been working. I'm getting so many in the past couple of years that have repetitive themes of being really, really badly hurt when they were kids. So I'm having an awakening, like, oh my God, how long has this been happening? What are we doing here? Why are we being so mean to each other? And why are we hurting the children? You know, I have so many questions, but the theme is now the people that have been really here to help uplift humanity and help people heal themselves are hurting really badly, and they need to come in and have sessions. So helping ourselves, I know this isn't a message that, I mean, it's more common in the healing circles, but usually in our conditioning, we were taught to be selfless or, you know, serve others, don't think of yourself, you know, be selfless. And there's a big reversal of that going on. People are being told by their higher selves they must take care of themselves or they're not going to be healthy. So I think it's like a balancing act, if that makes any sense. It's like long overdue that people need to help themselves and others more equally.
Sure. No, I love all of that, right? Like
Yeah.
I think it's very important. Self-care is so important, especially as a therapist, right? Like taking that time to like really take care of you and because I mean, you absorb a lot of that energy, right? As a regression therapist, like don't you take that on a little bit? Like
You know what? I think it depends on the person. I happen to be very empathic and sensitive, so I have to work with that about myself so that I don't take on people's problems, but I can sit neutrally with them and be very neutral, like kind and caring and objective, really. Because yeah, sometimes if the story is very close to home or similar to my own life, I have to be careful. I need to be there for them. And I can't really serve my client well if I'm feeling really down about their story, right? So as a practitioner and as me as a human, and just the way I'm wired, I do have to pay attention to my energetic boundaries, because no, we're not supposed to take on people's stuff. We're supposed to help them work through their stuff, right? So I have to work for myself. And a lot of us will do things like, obviously we're humans and we're caring humans. So when we hear stories that are sad, we do feel sad. We don't mean to, but we care about people. We don't, who likes to hear that somebody's been hurt? But we have to make sure that we're processing that information in a way that's neutral and say, okay, these are souls learning lessons, right? These aren't just human beings. These are giant souls in a body who came to learn about stuff on earth, right? So we have to shift our perspective, but we also have to ground ourselves after the session. But it's really helpful to do that, to just go down, take a walk, get your feet on the earth, or people have many ways, take a salt bath, or, you know, go listen to some nice music and relax. And people have 1,000,001 ways to kind of ground and release any residue from, you know, the energy of the session afterwards. Yeah, people learn as they go.
So I have a question about the higher self, right? Like people that haven't had a QHHT session, does the voice that comes through, is it different than their actual? Because I've listened to a couple of audio tapes of some of the sessions. Some people have a different voice or a different aspect, which sounds like their higher self come through. And then sometimes people sound like just like I'm speaking now from the higher from the higher self. Is there usually or generally like a distinction between the two sounds?
I think it depends a little bit on the connection, how deep the connection is with the person and their higher self. And it can go any which way. I would say that there's a little different sound vibrational frequency, a different quality when the higher self comes in most of the time. It sounds a little bit more like strong or authoritative or sure of itself. It's the aspect of that person that is their higher wisdom guiding their personality. So it kind of has the answers. So it has a sort of a more confident energy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I'm so fascinating with it, right? Like, do they remember their conversations? Like, do they have visualizations of it? Do they remember when they come out of it? Like, what are some of the experiences that they have when they have a past life regression and when they communicate with the higher self?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question because we're noticing a lot of differences nowadays. People tend to be more aware when they're under. So when they're in the session, it's almost like they feel like they're here in the room, but they're receiving the information and they're saying it. They just aren't focusing on the room. Basically, the eyes are shut, so they're focusing inward into their inner world. But sometimes they can feel like they're going to remember everything, but because it's the dream state, when they wake up, sometimes even right after they wake up, when you start to talk about, do you remember what you saw? Do you remember what you said? They'll go, I think so. And then you ask them a question about something and they'll go, wait a minute, I don't really remember that. So it fades like a dream really quickly, which is why we do a recording of the session. But I would say it differs with everyone. For people that are pretty aware when they come into the sessions, or they are used to doing this kind of healing work, or psychic work, or they're intuitive, this is maybe a more normal state for them. So they may remember more of their session. It's kind of different for everyone. We actually never really know how much somebody's going to remember until the end of the session. So we just assume that it's going to unfold like it's supposed to, but we record everything because we don't really know if they'll remember. But we really have no idea when somebody is under, if they're going to remember or not. So we treat everyone the same and we just guide them through the session the same way. Higher self delivers information, healing is done, whatever's appropriate happens. And then afterwards, we see what their experience, what they remember, right?
Sure. This is my favorite part, right? What do they say about us being creators and manipulating energy? Like, what do they say about that?
Well, it's pretty much understood in the realm that we create everything just to learn. And so probably what the messages are reinforcing pretty much throughout in every session is that the people, we humans, need to understand that we actually are the creators of our lives. What did Dolores say? Like, we're the writer, the producer, the director, the actor in our own script, our own play, right? That is still a little bit of a foreign concept for most humans. There's a little bit of a disconnect between I'm creating this, which means my life, which means I'm creating my difficulties and my happy times. I'm creating my health and I'm creating my sickness. That's still a bit foreign for people to take that chunk and understand it. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, right. That puts the responsibility back in our hands. And some people don't want to take ownership of that, right? Like, they want to be the victims. And this puts you right in the forefront of creating your own reality. And you've created all of your, well, I mean, I've come to the realization that every decision that I've ever made in my life has gotten me to where I'm at right here, right? Like, I have every yes and every no, every maybe, every non-decision I've ever had in my entire life has gotten me to this point right now, speaking to you. And
that's right.
I used to question, why is this happening to me? Why is God doing this to me? Right. Like the old Trey,
right.
Would say that. And this realization, it feels better, I guess. It's like, it makes me feel good because it's like, if I unconsciously created this reality, right? Like, just going through my life, going through the motions, making my decisions, not really conscious. Like, imagine what I can do if I'm consciously making these decisions, like from a heart space,
That's
from
right.
a space of higher consciousness. Like, what kind of reality can I create? So it's freeing almost, if that makes sense.
Completely. It's so empowering. And that's actually what Dolores wanted when she created this technique. She wanted people to remember who they were so they could be so empowered to say, hey, if I created this ailment, I can create the cure. I can create the solution. I can create the healing. If you can do it one way, you can do it the other way. And so it becomes very empowering, very liberating, like you said. Like you're free. You're free to create now in a way you want, as opposed to a way that you just inherited because you didn't know back then that you were the creator of it. And we have to learn. There's no judgment or blame in this work, by the way, which is what I love about it. It's like we're all learning. So that means we don't know until we know. But now that this information is available, way more people are going to be waking up to realize, oh, it's actually incredibly empowering. And, feeling like I'm a victim in my life doesn't feel good, and it makes me feel down and trapped and like I can't get out of it. But feeling empowered, like, oh gosh, if you create that, you can create something better too. That's incredible, isn't it? It just flips the whole thing on its head, right?
Absolutely, it does, right? Like, it has for me. It's more empowering. So now it's kind of like, well, what can I do now consciously and recreate?
Yes.
Right? I think that's so exciting. It's so liberating. It's
Right.
yeah. I just think it's,
And
like you said, healing ourselves.
Yes. Yes, this is kind of a big game changer, isn't it? Because we've been taught that we have to go to an external authority for healing. And that, how many times, if you just scan your past, how many times you've been to a doctor and they're like, well, how do you know? When you're trying to describe your symptoms, it's like, well, I live in this body. I know what it feels like. So it's so, like, there's been such a strange disconnect with our current healthcare patterns and ways, where I think it's changing. Obviously, it's changing a lot now as more and more people are realizing things. But we literally were at the mercy of an outside authority. We told our problems to that person and they prescribed something for us. So we got very far away from feeling like we had healing ability. In fact, we got so far away, we thought we had no healing ability, and it was all coming from the doctors, right? So we're returning to this idea that we create our health, we create our ailments, and it's not meant to be judgment or blame-based at all. You have to do this work with great compassion as we learn how things actually work, as we restore our knowledge and wisdom and knowingness that the source of all knowing is inside of us. As we restore that memory, we could say, we're going to be able to do a lot more good. We're going to be able to help ourselves and heal ourselves far more often than not. I think there's going to be a need for medicine to be there for a while because not many people understand this yet. So we're going to need physical medicine for a while until people start to be taught this at an earlier age, that we can heal ourselves and start learning how. And this is why a lot of star seeds are on the planet and helper beings are on the planet now. They're bringing back the healing ways to the masses. You know what I mean? So we're on the cusp of a great shift. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. And playing around with how to heal yourself and having sessions and learning how you can heal yourself through that higher self connection. This is it's like Christmas Day every day. Like, what can I do today? What can I learn today? How can I affect change in a really positive way inside my body? And then how can I gather with sort of open-minded people and heart-centered people and make more changes through organizations and cultures and groups and countries and like more in the world? How can we spread this out to the world? So it's going to get real fun real fast, I think.
I hope so. I can't wait.
It is already for me because I've been doing this for a decade. So sometimes I have to watch myself because I have this incredibly positive ideology about what we can do as humans. It's very different from some of the other people around me who haven't done this type of work for 10 years, to see that what we call miracles and higher self calls normal. I've been seeing miracles for over 10 years by everyday people. It shifts my reality into something far more positive. But if I go into a group of mass consciousness people who do not have this understanding, I mean, I'm very foreign to them, and I may be irritating to them, because then they have to kind of sit back and go, what do you mean I've been creating this? You're full of baloney. Get out of here, right? It's too much of a chasm, too much of a difference from their current understanding, right? So slowly but surely, more and more people are going to get exposed to this through friends and family members who have had sessions or become practitioners. It's really a beautiful positive ripple effect that's happening because of Dolores's creation. And we're so thankful for her creation, and for Julia and the family continuing to teach and train people so we can spread this out more and more and more. It's really fun.
Yes, I love all of that. Diane, I can talk to you for weeks.
Yeah.
How can people connect with you?
Fun. Yeah.
How can people connect with you? How can they find out more about you? I think there's a code too, right? That they can use to sign up for QHHD or something like that, like 10% off or something like that.
Yes, it's on my email. So, I mean, my email address is healingworkssalon@gmail.com. If people want to reach out to me that way, they can reach out to me through my website, which is healingworks-salon.com. And they can send a little note through my website. I'm a little behind right now on correspondence. I'm just going to put out a big ol' "I'm so sorry, please forgive me" to everyone who's trying to get in touch with me right now, because it's just been a massive uptick in the amount of people who are interested in having sessions right now. So I've seen a huge change in the past 6 months,
Sure. I love it. Diane, this has been fascinating.
Yes,
I love it. I love it. Thank you for taking the time to hang out with me tonight.
Oh my gosh, it's been so much fun. Thank you so much. And you let me know if you need any help with getting started with the training, because I'll be here for you. I love to help people when they're getting started. I love to coach and mentor and help. I just ran a class, a level 1 companion class, which was a blast, and had 9 great people show up, and we had a blast. We just had a blast. So yeah, you're in the wings now. So let me know how you're doing. And, it's a pleasure and a joy to be able to chat with you. Thank you so much.